B20Vtec again. I kind of skipped ahead a few steps since the last video, but I did get the rest of the bottom end kind of assembled here. Got the windage tray on and the pickup tube, as well as the oil pump and the rear main seal. One thing that I'd like to point out to you guys that really helps when you're putting these motors together and you're not putting new seals in or anything like that is to put, like I use like marine grease on the seals. I just like to coat the inside of the seal and the outside of the seal with grease. And that definitely seems to help prolong the life of the seal and as well as keep it from leaking. I don't know why, but I think the grease kind of maybe swells the seal a little bit and, you know, helps bring back an old seal to help it seal again. I don't know if you should say that 5 times fast or not. Okay, I jumped ahead quite a bit on you guys. Like I said, once I get rolling on something, I just keep turning wrenches and keep getting it done so I can get this thing in the car. But yeah, got the oil pan on here. And then I just kind of put the crank pulley on here just to verify what I can do about my alternator situation, because I don't have a B series alternator. I only have the one that was out of the car, which is a single cam alternator. And you know, alternators are kind of expensive for Hondas. And I don't really have the money to be spending on buying a new alternator, so I'm making the D series alternator fit on the B series. I made it fit by just spacing the top bracket here. There's like a little, you know, I just jammed a random ass nut in there on both sides and got it bolted down. And then as for this, I had to just run the bolt on the opposite side where it normally goes. Normally this section here is actually on the right side and not on the left, but yeah, you just got to tighten it from this side. And now I'll just have to go get a belt that fits and we'll be all good to go. So if you're in a pinch and you want to use a D series alternator, because obviously the D series ones are a lot easier to come by, you just do this little trick and it'll work great for you. I actually got a buddy, he actually helped me out. He sold me this block and stuff and all that. He actually told me how to do this D series alternator spacer thing. So shout out to Dual. He actually builds Hondas up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So yeah, hit him up too if you have questions on Hondas or need help with shit. We're going to be getting the rest of this thing together. I'm going to get some head studs and a head gasket. I also need a water pump and a timing belt. So I'm going to run to the store, get some stuff for it, and we'll be back in a jiff. Next up on the to-do list, I just went to the parts store and got a head gasket. I'm using just the B20 head gasket. They say you're supposed to get like a Cometic or something, but the B20 just has like one little port that doesn't flow properly or something, but it still works. Guys use it all the time and they don't have any issues, and I don't feel like waiting another week for parts, so I'm just going to be using the B20 head gasket here. And I also have some ARP head studs that I got from my homie Chris, and got some other parts as well from him, like a water pump and some other stuff that I got to get on this thing. The only thing is with these head studs, one of them actually snapped. Just the top of the thread snapped off. So I'm going to be, you know, just using what I got here. Like I said in the last video, I'm literally just doing this as an experiment. I'm just doing this as cheap as frickin' possible. I literally, after spending, you know, buying the pistons and rods and everything like that, and the head and the axles and the clutch and all that stuff, I got like $1,000 into this car and motor. So I'm not doing too bad. This is kind of like a, I don't know, extreme cheapskates kind of thing. We have to find one more ARP nut because I am missing one of the nuts. But other than that, I'm going to throw this head on here and should be good to go. Another thing on these VTEC cylinder heads, when you throw them onto like an LS or a B20 bottom end, so like a non-VTEC dual cam motor, when you put a VTEC head onto it, you need to plug this hole right here on the bottom. As you can see, I use like an Allen head set screw and tapped it to 1/8 inch pipe thread and then threaded it in. You got to make sure that it doesn't stick out past the cylinder head. You got to make sure it's recessed in there so it's not going to mess anything up. And put some Loctite on it, and it should be good to go. Alright, so let's stuff this cylinder head on here now. Turn some lights on here in the car so you can see me. It's getting a little dark out. It's like 4:22 p.m. and it's like almost dark out, which sucks. But anyways, today I kind of took a break from working on the motor, and I went up to my buddy Duels again, and he hooked it up with some spindles. So I got spindles, and I'll be able to fit the B-Series axles now. And then I also got a oil line for the cylinder head, because on B20 or LS-Vtecs you need to feed the cylinder head oil, you know, from the back of the oil filter housing or the oil pressure sending unit or whatever. So I got that stuff, and now I'm just heading back, and we're going to start working on it again and maybe get it stuffed into the car, hopefully. I also wanted to touch on a subject. I get a lot of hate on what I do quite a bit, and you know, I understand where everybody's coming from that's hating. I don't disagree with a lot of the stuff they say, like, you know, you shouldn't, you know, run cast pistons, and you shouldn't do, you know, a lot of the stuff that I do. But the fact of the matter is I love doing what I'm doing, and, you know, I do everything on a budget purposely, because I feel when you spend a bunch of money on a car or a motor, it takes the fun out of, you know, working on cars. If you spend like 30 grand on your car, or 10 grand even on your car, you're scared to even drive the thing. You know, and you're scared to break the parts that you bought for it. And on the other hand, I run my shit hard as shit all day long, every day, as much as I can. And at the end of the day, if it breaks, I don't really care if I have to work on it, because you know, I don't really have a whole lot of money invested. So, yeah. I mean, to each their own. Some people don't agree with what I'm doing, and that's totally fine. I'm not here to hate on anybody or whatever. But, you know, if you don't like what I'm doing, don't watch. Simple as that. I also know that it's probably not good, you know, that I'm trying to start like a business, kind of working on cars and tuning cars and stuff like that, when I'm kind of hacking my own shit together. I hope that some of you see the knowledge that can be brought from, you know, what I'm doing. It takes a creative mind to be able to do the stuff that I do. Hopefully a lot of you can see the true knowledge in what I'm doing, and you can look past the, you know, me not spending money on going fast. You know, anybody can buy parts and throw them in. But it takes a creative mind and a driven individual like myself to drive an hour one way, go pull spindles off on a gravel driveway without any tools or nothing, and then have spindles in the back seat ready to go back home and throw this thing together. Once again, thanks Duel for hooking me up with these spindles. It's definitely going to help me out. These CRX spindles are definitely hard to come by. Now I'm back in the garage here, and I'm going to finish up this motor. I just got my timing belt tensioner installed. Pretty self-explanatory. There's just a spring that gets hooked onto here and then on the tensioner, and then it slips into this slot right here. Got my cylinder head torqued down to spec, and now we're going to put the cams in. But before we do that, we want to make sure that this is nice and oiled. So I'm just going to pour some engine oil on it before I put the caps onto the cams. All nice and oiled up with that Schaefer's. Oh yeah, she slides in up and down. Look at that. All right. So before you put your caps on, you always want to make sure that the cams are faced up. You can see right here there's an up arrow. You want to make sure that those are both up. And as long as they're like, you know, in the general area where you need to time it, you should be good. I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a tip here. When you have a B16 or GSR cylinder head that you get that is disassembled, like mine was when I bought it. It's completely kind of bare. All the parts were taken out of it. And the cam cap orientation is a little bit confusing, but not really. These are just the oiling rails here. And then you have the caps that hold down, you know, everything here. So the numbers always start, number 1 is always closest to the timing belt here, and then it goes 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now when you do this, you want to make sure the arrows on all the caps are pointing towards the timing belt as well, and that is the proper way to install the caps. Now we are timing the motor here. Like I said, you got to line up the up air, the 2 indentations on the cam there that say up, and then there's also 2 dashes right here and here, as you can see. And then down on the crank, it's a little bit tough to see, but there is a mark right here, and then there's a mark right here that you need to correspond with each other. So once you get those all lined up, you can put the belt on, and then what I like to do is just get the belt. Hang on. Alright, so what I like to do is I like to put the crank key in. So there's just a little Woodruff key that goes right there. And then I pop the crank pulley on. And then I spin the engine until all the slack is on the right side. So like all the timing belt slack is going to be on the water pump side of the motor. So we'll spin it. Nope. Okay, so now this side is tight. Okay, so the left side of the belt now is tight, and then all your slack is going to be on the right side here. Now what I like to do is I like to actually take like a pry bar on the tensioner and pry up on it a little bit, and then tighten the tensioner bolt. So I just got a screwdriver wedged in here to hold tension on it, and then you just tighten the tensioner up. Now you do not want to go too tight on the tensioner bolt because you can strip it extremely easy. Anything on this engine, there we go. Anything on this engine, you got to remember it's all bolted to aluminum, so the aluminum strips out extremely easy. I've done it a bunch of times, and then you got to take the frickin' motor back out to fix the threads you fucked up. All right, so now it's nice and tight over here, and it's, you know, you're obviously going to have a little bit more slack on the left side because there's, you know, more room for the belt to run without having to go over, you know, an obstacle. So now I'll just spin the engine over. And then I'll spin it. I'll respin the engine. Just, you know, spin it around once and go back to your timing marks. So right there. And then take your crank pulley back off and double check your mark. And we are spot on. It's actually super common for people to mess up the timing on a B series or any Honda on that matter. I've tuned probably over 24 cars that have had a timing off by like 1 tooth. And if the timing's off by 1 tooth, I mean, you could be down 100, 200 horsepower if it's a turbo car. And yeah, so this is extremely important on a Honda to get this right. Okay, so I skipped ahead a few steps here, and we got the lower timing cover on and the crank pulley here. Always remember when you put the crank pulley bolt in to put red Loctite on it. At least I do. I've had these things actually come off before, so it's always a good idea to put some red Loctite on here. We got the D series alternator belt on with the alternator tightened up and everything like that. This thing fits awesome. 4K320 is the belt that I used to make all this work. You know, D series alternator with the you know, B series motor. Also here, I got the LSVtec line on, which is pretty much just goes from the sandwich plate here on the back of the motor. This is an add-on, and then you just have external oil running into the cylinder head up here, so that way the VTEC, the lobes and all that get oiled properly. Next thing I'm doing here is I'm just cleaning off the surface of the head here where the intake manifold gasket sits. This is another really important part of building a Honda motor, is you want to make sure that all the old gasket material is cleaned off from the cylinder head here where the intake manifold sits. If you've ever heard the famous Honda idle surge, like the whoa ball, whoa ball, whoa ball, that shit drives me nuts. And 90% of the time it's a vacuum leak that causes that damn idle surge, and a lot of times it's because when guys put different intake manifolds on and stuff like that, they don't clean this surface as good as they should. If this leaks at all, it's going to throw the idle motor into confusion, and it's just not going to know what to do because the car has a vacuum leak. So now we're going to throw the intake manifold onto the motor. Is that vape or cold? It's just cold out. But anyways, got the motor pretty much buttoned up here. Looks pretty snazzy. Got the VTEC solenoid on, the water neck, the fittings there. Got the LS VTEC line. Intake manifolds all bolted on, valve covers on. Timing belt, yeah, she is ready for a transmission. So now we just got the spindles put back on the car here. I got those spindles today, so now we're just getting the car back on the ground so we can roll it in the garage and get this bitch ripping. Isn't that right, T-Big? Yup. Now I got to hook the cherry picker up to that there motor. Well, I just got the transmission on, the flywheel and the clutch, and yeah, now we just got to throw the T-bracket on the rear of the motor, and then we can get it into the car. We're just jacking her up right now. Alright, I didn't film a whole lot the last few hours, but bam! Look at that. Motor is in. Everything's looking good. The only thing that sucks is when we hooked the motor with the cherry picker, we actually hooked it a little bit too low, and this thing was kind of a cocksucker to get into the engine bay and line all the mounts up. Hondas sometimes are kind of a pain in the ass to get the motor in, just because like the tranny mount and stuff like that, you have to get the mount onto the trans and then lower the motor below the mount on the frame here, and then get everything situated there. But needless to say, the B20 Vtec is now in its home, and hopefully it won't be moving anytime soon, and we won't have to pull it apart again. But yeah, I've been thrashing super hard today, super tired, and yeah, I had to drive about an hour north of my house here, and I pulled these spindles off, and I swapped spindles with another car, and then I came home, finished assembling the motor, and now it's in the car, so I'm super happy. I'm gonna pick up more on this thing tomorrow, and hopefully give you guys more of an update. Hopefully we'll have this thing running soon. I don't know exactly how long, because I gotta get a few things yet. I gotta figure out what clutch cable bracket I need, because I don't have a bracket for this tranny, and I don't know what traction bar I'm going to run, because the exhaust on these CRXs is super tight, and you either have to cut and modify the factory one, or you have to buy an aftermarket traction bar to be able to fit any sort of exhaust on a B series engine in a CRX. Just because the engines are super tight in these cars, there's not a lot of room to play with. It is fucking cold here. Yeah, there's frost on all the vehicles. I'll show you if you guys can see. Yeah, So I don't know. I got to get this thing pushed out of the garage and definitely clean my garage up. I've noticed when I do projects and shit all the time and it's cold out, I get kind of slacking on cleaning, and I definitely have to clean up the garage quite a bit because when I get onto a project, I just keep wrenching and throw wrenches all over the floor and throw bolts all over the floor and whatnot. So I definitely got to clean my garage up before I really work on this thing anymore because I hate working in a mess. It kind of sucks. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. We got the motor in the CRX. Sorry I didn't do like a time lapse or anything of us installing the motor. But yeah, we just kind of got it in and got work done. Sometimes when I'm filming, it kind of interferes with actually getting work done. So I apologize about not filming. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward for any Honda. I mean, you just gotta line the mounts up and throw the bolts in. But yeah, till next time, guys, I will keep you updated on this build as we go. And yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you are new, and like this video if you enjoy the content. And we will see you next time.